If Master Chief from the Halo video games existed in real life, I almost guarantee this is what he'd ride. The Can-Am Canyon is one of the strangest looking wheeled machines I have seen ever, period.
This shouldn't be cool. It kind of looks like a snowmobile crashed into a Morgan three-wheeler and then wound up at Jeep headquarters where they accidentally installed the wrong wheels and tires.
And yet, somehow, it just works. It's a little sci-fi, it's a little Mad Max, it's a little BMW GS, but at the end of the day, it's just freaking rad. Can-Am introduced their three-wheel road-going Spider back in 2007, and they've been evolving and transforming it ever since. And the Canyon version is the off-road spec. This is the Can-Am Raptor. It's wearing hiking boots. Let's find out what it's all about. You are going to find some big similarities between the off-road Canyon and the standard on-road Spider. First of all, engine, right? The same Rotax 3-cylinder, same semi-automatic transmission, similar brakes. So as a platform, they're related. Now the Canyon has been ruggedized over the standard Spider. So first up, you got 6.3 inches of ground clearance up from about 4.5, 10.2 inches of front suspension travel, 9.2 inches of rear suspension travel. You also get a skid plate, a little steel grill guard there, and then out back you are going to find a belt protector to keep those rocks and stones out of places they shouldn't be.
All right, I don't know if you can hear me at all, but let's talk about what this thing is like on the road. So I've dialed it out of the rally mode or the all-road setting, which is kind of the dirt setting, and I put it into the, let's see where I'm at. I'm in the normal setting. I can also go into sport here. And then for suspension, let's go ahead and dial that into the sport setting. Now let's go ahead and downshift a couple cogs. Third gear. Oh yeah, pretty good power. It's not tear your face off power, but it's good enough to have some fun with, that's for sure. We're cruising along here at about 50 miles an hour. In the third, in the second, yeah, quite a bit at the top upper RPMs. And I'm actually surprised with the stability of this thing on the road. You know, when you think three wheels, at least coming from the car space, typically that doesn't end well, but actually it's feeling really, really stable. I'm quite impressed with that, very impressed with that. And it's still comfortable. The different ride settings really have a big impact on the stiffness of the unit. And I thought, you know, it'd be kind of marketing, but it genuinely changes a lot how comfortable and how stable this is, especially when you're at speed. It's very cool.
Now there are a few different versions of Canyon, starting with this entry-level base model. Now you're going to notice it looks a little bit more stripped down. It's missing some of the features. It doesn't have the fancy suspension. It doesn't have the aluminum cases. This is going to be your entry-level Canyon. Moving up from there, you've got the XT. Now you've got the aluminum cases, of course, Canyon XT spelled out along the side there, but you also have a self-leveling rear suspension, a skid plate, and heated grips. Now, the one I've been riding today is the fully loaded Red Rock version. It's these green ones here. So these give you active suspension. They're the KYB Smart Shocks. It gives you a backup camera, which you can wire into the XT because the wiring's already there. Color matched aluminum cases. It gives you a custom drive mode. So this is going to be the top spec version of the Canyon and also the most expensive. We'll talk about that toward the end of the video. Now let's do a quick little tour of the Canyon and talk about some of the notable design elements. Now up front here, you've got those very space age looking LED headlights poking through the front. Of course, BRP logo down there by the intakes. There you've got a close-up look of the front end. One thing which I really wish Can-Am would do is you've got these little bumperettes which are painted like they should be recovery points, but they're not. I think that'd be a nice thing, especially for an off-road version, if those were genuine recovery points. You've got your turn signals located there on the fenders. The Red Rock version has these special wheels that have the Can-Am in orange, which gives it a very cool look. There's a close-up of those tires. Kenda tire, 155/65 R18, of course, full disc brakes. This is my favorite part, just the width, the way that fairing kind of juts out from the side, and it almost looks like the top of an intake there, right? But that's just a little bit of a design cue. Your actual engine is located down there. There's your little 1330cc. Down here is where you're gonna find your brake. only one brake on the entire unit. It's a foot brake. There's nothing up here on the handlebars. This does have the handlebar guards, which is cool. There's a couple different designs. Foot pegs there. These foot pegs, by the way, have these little rubber inserts which you can pull out if you want some additional grip off-road, or keep the rubber in for a smoother ride on the road. You can adjust your compression on your smart shocks back there, but they're also electronically adjustable, so you set a baseline using the mechanical adjustment, and then you can change it on the steering. I keep wanting to say steering wheel. Here's how you know I come from the car world. The handlebars. Now coming around back, there are those color match cases, actually pretty good size, fully lockable as well. Let me show you how that works. A little tricky with one hand here because this thing is loaded to the brim. Come on, Micah. All right, there we go. So easily fit my helmet, all my stuff in there, no problem. Very, very usable. I do like the color match things. This one has heated grips on the back. I also believe there's an accessory for a heated rear seat. You got heated grips up front here. And let me grab that key. Let's kind of go through some of the features that this unit has to offer. So key in the ignition there. Now that 10-inch instrument cluster is going to glide to life. This is shared with other Can-Am products. There should be a warning here, and then I accept that warning by twisting the grip forward, and that's gonna bring the TFT to life. Now, it is a touchscreen display, so you can navigate through it via touch, or of course you can do it via controls here on the left grip. So you got controls here. These are your drive settings. So for your heated grips, you've got some effort settings. There's your suspension, your different drive modes. And then you can also go through gauges, media, and statistics, all located up here. This is gonna be your little shift toggle. So you push in for an upshift, you pull back for downshift. You've got your high beams there, some volume controls for the TFT there, and then this is gonna be your essential kill switch there. Parking brake, electronic parking brake, turn it on and off by pushing that button. You end up using that a lot. Cruise control located there. And then you got your heated grip control there, the Link Q system for all sorts of accessories, and Can-Am has a ton of accessories for this thing. So if you really want to spec this out and build it exactly to your liking, you can definitely do so. And the last thing I want to show you is the windshield, which via this knob, you can raise and lower.
So after spending some time on this Canyon, there are some pros and some cons to this unit I want to talk about. The first pro, which has just been kind of shocking to me, is how unbelievably compliant this suspension is. Now granted, we're not exactly rock crawling this thing, and it was never intended to be a rock crawler. It wasn't really intended to be a trail rig either. Can-Am says first and foremost, this is an on-road three-wheeler that can tackle some light to medium off-roading, right? But regardless of that, the suspension is dialed. Now, this top spec Red Rock version does have active suspension, and I've got a few different riding settings I can dial the suspension into. My favorite being the comfort setting, because I am just an old man, but it is so compliant. Yeah, you got quite a bit of lean and pitch and roll in it, but when you're out on these rutted out dirt roads, it is absolutely perfect. Now I can't see anything. I'm gonna give the guy in front of me a little bit of room here. No, it's beautifully compliant, and it's just so comfortable. I can't believe how comfy it is. You could easily do 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on this unit and still feel good afterwards. Suspension travel, right? You got over 10 inches in the front, 9 in the rear. You know, we've hit a few big holes that I haven't been expecting, and it's soaked it all up without complaining. It's been honestly fine. It's been plenty, at least for dirt roads and rough roads. But speaking of soaking up the bumps, that is one of the downsides with having a 2-1 configuration versus a 4-wheeler like a Can-Am Maverick, or of course a 2-wheeled bike, is that it's a little tricky to avoid some of the holes. And what I mean by that is, on a motorcycle, you can easily just drive around the big holes and ruts, right? On a 4-wheeled UTV, or even to some extent an ATV, you can either avoid the holes or likely straddle the holes and ruts. But on the 3-wheeler, you've got the added width. I mean, it's not full UTV wide, but you do have some added width, so it's not quite as easy to skirt around the obstacles. And then with having two in the front, one in the rear, you kind of just end up hitting all the bumps. So if you really are skilled with it, there's a narrow gap between the front wheels and the rear where you can kind of slice and dice a little. But for the most part, if there's a hole or a rock or a bump, you're going to end up being in said hole or rock or bump, regardless if you really want to be there. So that takes something to get used to. The good news is you can stand up like a motorcycle, and you get a little bit of control with lean angle. It's not quite as dramatic as like what I found on a snowmobile. It certainly isn't anything like a motorcycle, but if you do weigh more than 78 pounds soaking wet like me, it is possible to kick the back end around a little bit, and you can have some fun with some weight transfer stuff. But primarily you steer these three-wheelers with the handlebars, so you can lean, and I think more than anything it makes it feel like you're doing something, but in reality the vast majority of the steering comes from just turning the bars. Now, these are electrically power assisted, so this does have power steering, and if we go into the gear mode here, I can actually check out some of the different settings. There's 3. I find on the max assistance, it's too light, and the whole unit becomes really twitchy. So I like it in either the standard mode or even the min. I think that's kind of where I like it, and then you have to use a little bit more upper body strength, but it feels far more in control. And that's another complaint I have about this. There's a lot of turn-in right off center, right? And it's immediate, and it's a little aggressive if you're not ready to catch it. Now, of course, with the traction control and stability programming that Can-Am has in this, it doesn't ever feel like you're going to roll it over, but it can be a little too twitchy for my liking. I almost wish it had a variable ratio on these bars so that when you're out in the dirt, for example, you could dial in something a little more squidgy and allow just a little bit more movement of the bars before you get that bite out of the front end.
So let's keep up with the ride now that the rain has dispersed a little, and talk about what this thing is like to live with. So, a bunch of advantages to these Canyons. They're just so easy to ride. You know, I'm a nerd who's about 83 pounds soaking wet, and I can hop on this thing and feel comfortable going 65, 70 miles an hour down the highway, and then also do mild trails like it's nothing. I mean, these things are just, they're point and shoot basically. You just got your shifter here on the left, you got your throttle on your right, and you got your brake by your right foot. And that's all you get. Now, there are no individual brake levers, so that brake by your right foot does everything. That's front and rear, it's proportioning, right? But you can adjust the percentage front and rear. It's constantly fixed, so potentially do lose out on a little bit of control, especially off-road, because you can adjust the front and rear bias, but you know, it is what it is. Very quiet for long distances, very comfortable, and even riding 2-up, I have no doubt this thing would be a real blast. All right, put my visor down there. The 3-cylinder, yeah, it's smooth. I mean, it doesn't have that much character. There's traction control kicking in normal mode. It's pretty linear in its power delivery. It does build a little bit in the upper RPMs, but it's not an engine that I'm stoked about. It's fine. It pushes the unit down the road, and that's the most you can ask of it, really. This is not really an on-road performance variant of the Can-Am 3-wheeler. This is kind of the adventure version, and for adventure riding, I really think it's well suited. Very upright seating position, good grip both on and off-road out of these tires, and honestly, with that increased ground clearance, it just helps in every situation, right? It helps on rough roads. It makes it comfy over potted and rutted out tarmac, and it's good off-road. If you're not interested in going fast like me, this is the unit to have. It really is good. Now, 10-inch instrument cluster here, the TFT display shows you everything you need to know. Right now I've got it in current ride, but if I push this button, I can cycle through to gauges, to media, to statistics. Let's go to the gauges. I'll show you what the main gauge cluster looks like. So we got speed on the left, we got the tach on the right, we got gear position there in the center. It does have Apple CarPlay, and it is a touchscreen display, but Apple CarPlay is a little bit of a faff to get to. You can't simply just connect a phone and call it good. So last thing we need to talk about is pricing. Now the base Canyon starts at about $25,300. The XT will run you $29,800, and then this, the Red Rock, well, that comes in at $32,300. Now, competition, well, you have vehicles like the Polaris Slingshot, but when it comes to kind of an off-road oriented fun haver, well, you could also get yourself something like that, right? Something within the Can-Am side-by-side world, and you could definitely get one of those for $30,000. However, this is 50 state street legal. So while here in South Dakota, it is totally cool to ride side-by-sides on the road, where I live in Colorado, that is very much not allowed. And what's cool about this is, you know, you could go out there, have some fun on the road, and then with those tires and suspension, go have some fun off the road as well. So that is kind of where, you know, Can-Am would say the magic of this is it democratizes off-road adventure, but at a cost, a pretty big cost. Now folks, I had a really good time on this Canyon. I still am not sure how much I would use this thing off-road because it's definitely designed for the mildest of trails and the dirt roads. However, when you get it on the right unpaved path, it's a ton of fun. And to find the best unpaved roads in your area, check out Onyx Off-Road, the #1 go-to off-road trail navigation software anywhere. But other than the price, this thing is awesome. But for me, it would be tough because you could get a pretty good side-by-side or a pretty good Jeep for $33,000 and have similar fun. However, you're not gonna have as much fun getting there, and you're probably not gonna look as cool because that Canyon is pretty freaking awesome to look at. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. This has been Tommy with TFL Off-Road. We'll see you in the next video.